just brief us about yourself. What is your Hadoop experience and the last project you have worked on?
Okay, so yeah, so let me keep it short. Like in the initial first 2 or 3 years, I was working with the self-scripting and Informatica as a tier 2, and it is as our end database. And subsequently, I started moving towards the Hadoop tech stack, and on which I worked on Hive especially, and followed by Spark also, and that too with Scala. And in the last year, I moved to Walmart Labs. And in Walmart Labs, everything was on the Hadoop side. And on the Hadoop, I was working on Hive and Spark again with Scala. Also, I got some few POCs on PySpark as well. I mean, that's summing up all my technical capabilities.
So, what is the
Yeah.
version of Hive and Spark you're working on?
And the Spark version that I worked on is 2.4.3, and Hive it was as I remember it was I believe something like 1.6.
Okay. Can you just elaborate us about the Hive architecture?
Yeah. So Hive is actually built on top of Hadoop only. It's the SQL, ANSI SQL standard that has been created by the developers. So whatever the queries we write in Hive, actually those are the SQLs, and that will be internally converted to MapReduce, and it will be submitted to the whatever the Hadoop architecture follows after that, it will follow that architecture. So Hive is just a you can say as an interface that will be suiting the SQL programmers, and at the back end it is following the Hadoop architecture to execute the query, and internally it is doing MapReduce only.
Okay.
Okay. Can you elaborate more on the metadata, where is it stored and all in Hive architecture?
Yeah, Hive actually has metadata, and it can be MySQL, or it can be anything, like whatever, like while installing the Hive, we will be mentioning that, and the metadata. So once we create any schema or any, all the schema and if we point a file to that schema, point a directory, all those schema, the metadata is being stored in one of the DB. And so whenever we actually try to query anything, so it actually tries to get the details from this metadata DB only. It tries to, at the runtime only, it tries to get in touch with the schema and the details of where the files are there. And it will also store the Nemnode information.
Okay, can you tell us what is MSCK repair command? What does it do in Hive?
Yeah, so whenever we are creating external tables, correct? So external tables, whenever we are going to add, let's say we are going to add partitions or directories to that particular directory structure of what the external table has been created. So to realign everything, we need to run this MSCK repair table, so that on the query run, it will point to the new files which has been added to those directories as well, or else new partitions which has been added.
Okay. Priyavrat or Naresh, you can go ahead. I'll ask questions from between.
Yeah, actually, I want to ask one question, the same from architecture part. In what case this MapReduce will trigger? I mean, we have a DLL or DDL, right? So in what case this MapReduce trigger? In what case MapReduce won't trigger?
Yeah, whenever it is like the case when we will be simply selecting some few records from the table, like select from limit 10 or limit 100. So then there is there is need of only mapper in that case. And whenever you are trying to get the metadata like describe schema or describe extended schema, I mean all this metadata information, in those cases MapReduce will not be involved. And whenever we are doing limit 100 or something, then that case map will be only triggered. But whenever we are running complex queries, so complex queries means whenever there is some the active or passive transformations is involving or join is getting involved, in those cases map along with the reduce phase, whenever there will be any active transformation, then only there will be a reduce phase which will be coming into picture.
If I want to change one column name in a Hive table, so what is the syntax that you write?
Alter table, table name, rename column to rename that particular column to the new column name.
Okay. I want to change the data type also for that particular column. So is the same syntax one, or is there any change in the syntax?
Can you come again?
I want to change data type as well along with the column name. Okay. Is the same syntax works, or do we have any different syntax?
Data type, if you want to change, yeah, we can also change data type by using the alter command.
All right. From which version of Hive is allowing us to change the or update the record or delete the record or update the particular record, something like that?
Yeah, I have gone through this in internet only. I mean, I heard it is from the Hive 2.0 version. It is supporting the DML operations.
DML means?
It's like update.
Is it possible to change a particular value for the particular record in a Hive?
No, it is not possible in Hadoop or in Hive. So, I mean, those are the update operations that is only supported in Hive later versions, like after 2.12, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So, is there any other limitation, like will it work in all the file formats after version that you are referring?
I am not sure about the limitations in the Hive versions because we haven't used these update statements in the Hive. Like we used to have this insert override. If any new change data we want to propagate into the Hive table. So I'm not sure about the limitations that it will have in the newer versions.
All right. I think you are aware about partitioning, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we know that when we load the partition table, we have a SQL. But
when we load the partition table, we have a
standard SQL, right? Insert override table name, and column, partition column, something like that, right? So is there any other method to load the partition table other than writing this query? And in a sense, I mean, what I'm asking, can we use Hadoop commands to load the data into backend to that particular partition table?
Yes, absolutely we can do. So once we have the data only, we can run the Hadoop native commands, SDFS, DFS commands to move the data to that particular directory where we are storing the data for that particular Hive table. And if it is external table, then we need to run MSEK repair table at the end, or else if it is a managed table, it will be taken care at the instant time only when we are going to get a call for the table.
Okay. So I think you are aware of bucketing concept also, right?
Yeah.
Can we do bucketing for the partition column?
I don't think we can do bucketing for the partition column.
Mm-hmm. Can you please explain how this bucketing will work?
Yeah, so bucketing actually ensures that whatever the number of buckets we are clustering by, it ensures that, and on which column we are bucketing by, it ensures that the data of the same type, the same value, should be clustered across a single bucket. I mean, if we cluster the buckets by, let's say, 6 or 8 or 10, so let's say a particular value of the same column should be residing under the same file. So that is what the property of bucketing is.
Okay. Okay, Priyaprada, you continue. We'll come back later.
Okay. So just tell me, like, whenever you were saying that delete and all those are not possible, so how can we truncate a table in Hive?
How can we
Truncate a table in a Hive table.
I mean, truncate command will work.
Okay.
If we do truncate table name, it will work.
Okay.
But you are saying if it is deleting specific records, then it is not possible. Then we have to do insert override and
Okay.
filter that particular record.
Okay. Apart from means, if we are not going to use truncate command, so what are the other alternative that is available?
What we can do is we can remove like using the DSS command, we can remove the entire directory, the Hive specified directory of the table. That will erase the data. Or else we can do drop table if it is a managed table.
Mm-hmm.
But if it is external table, we have to run the drop table as well as the drop table statement, as well as we have to delete the underlying SDFS files from the directory.
Okay. Any ETL tool you have exposure to, or don't you have any exposure to any ETL tool like that? Means how are you invoking any Hive commandments from where you are invoking such queries?
So we can run the commands by using Hive -e and followed by the SQL command, SQL query. Or else we can use we can pass the SQL in a file, and we can use that Hive -s. And for running those things in a batch.
Yeah, that's what I'm asking. Means in your project, how you invoke that?
Yeah, actually we run it through the Hive command.
Okay.
So we have written a script, and that script will internally call this SQLs. It will read the SQLs, and it will like sequentially pass through this Hive -e. Then within the double quotes, it will pass the SQL.
Okay. So I have one HQL query. Means one Hive query is I have one Hive query. When I'm executing it.
Sorry, your voice is breaking actually.
Okay. So is it fine now?
Yeah, it is fine now.
Okay. So I have one Hive query. Okay. So when I'm executing that Hive query, it is it is taking very long time to execute. So what are the performance measures we can consider so that we can reduce means we can have this quick execution?
Yeah. So basically, in my previous project, what we used to do is we used to run everything in the Tejas execution engine, because that will do in-memory processing. So we can go for the Tejas execution engine, and with the Tejas execution engine, there comes a multiple set of parameters that we can give. Like we can define the memory size. What is the grouping size? And if it is a complex, join statements, we can try to see like how can we do the map side join. We can increase the auto join threshold to the predefined size. The smaller table size we can define while before running the queries, so that it will be broadcasted. And that is one method. The other methods are basically, if we are selecting few columns and we are joining on this one or two columns, I mean it is advised that we should keep the file format as ORC or ParkWait, and
Okay.
the other, there are many other things that I have tuned actually.
Okay.
Currently, give me some time. I can
Yeah, that
speak
is fine. I
on
got it. Some of the things what you said. Okay.
Yeah.
Basically, we worked on stage.
Okay. Yeah, got it. You're saying that through Tails you were able to optimize your query, but other than that, there are other like similar to RDBMS, there are other optimization techniques that you use, and you mentioned one or two.
Yeah, we actually need to play around those like the grouping values and all, how much memory we need to allocate to this particular job and all. So we have to play around that.
Okay, so you mentioned that you also worked on PySpark, right? Or Spark?
Yeah, PySpark is kind of a POC project, but majorly on Scala Spark.
Scala Spark, but then you will ask some questions on Spark in general.
Okay.
I mean, no language dependency, no Python or no Scala, but in general.
Okay. Yeah.
So what is Spark and why is it used?
Can you come again?
So what is Spark? Like, how is it different from Hive? Why is it used? Spark.
So to be precise, like Hive on Tails is equivalent to Spark, because Tails does in-memory processing and Hive, I mean Spark is also doing in-memory processing. But Hive without with the MapReduce engine, it is running the MapReduce. But Spark, like in memory, when we say the intermediate data is not written back to the disk, like that is stored in the memory itself, and the subsequent transformations are being performed. So that is what the advantage of Spark. So actually we leverage this in-memory processing with Spark, and that is how it is different from all other Hadoop tech stack, and it does a faster processing because of that.
Okay, so you are saying that there is no intermediate storing of data, like on disk, like how it is done for traditional MapReduce process.
Yes. So, but the output is written to the disk. Whenever we use the action, whenever we call any action like write to the, when we use that write command, it will be writing to the disk only. But intermediate operation, also one doubt I have still that is not clear until now. I mean, no site is also clearly saying that if shuffling output is written to the disk or it is written to the memory. Somebody is saying it is written to the memory, and whenever the stealing happens, it is written back to the disk. But nobody is actually mentioning but somebody is telling all the output of the shuffling will be going to the disk in Spark. So that point is not clear as of now.
You're saying shuffling. Whenever there is a shuffling,
Whenever there is a shuffling, the output has to be written to a disk. That is what is being mentioned in many of the sites. But in you will see some sites it will be saying some of the output will be in the memory, and whatever is getting spilled up from the memory.
It depends on there is one method in which we can specify if it is on disk or memory or both.
That is the hard-coded way, but like the default property, what it will do, it will store in memory or it will, so that is.
Okay. So, but where I was getting it was, have you heard of persist data frame? Persist method or action?
Sorry? Can you come again?
Persist. Have you heard of persist?
Yeah, persist method.
Okay, why is it used?
Yeah. So whenever we are calling the same intermediate result again and again, intermediate RDD, you can say to be precise, again and again. So on an action on an RDD, it actually involves, it again runs all the DAG and computes the data. To avoid that, we can persist that RDD output by using dot persist, so that again when we'll be calling that RDD to do some more transformation, there is no need to compute it again. That is the advantage of persist, and it will increase our performance.
So is it written in memory or on disk when you persist?
So persist by default it is in memory. Like persist, if we are not giving anything inside the bracket, it is the same as caps. But yeah, there are a couple of other properties also. So, other properties like we can write to disk. There are other properties also, but I haven't explored all other properties.
Okay. So what is broadcasting? A data frame or a table?
Yeah, broadcasting, what it does is it actually pushes that particular data set or data frame to the all worker nodes, so that there will be no shuffling in this case. Like in the local worker nodes, only the whatever operations we want to perform, it can be done locally. And yeah, so that is what the use of broadcasting is, to do a map side join.
Have you ever used broadcasting variables or joins in your previous projects, or you have?
No, not actually. I haven't. So we have used persist, but broadcasting we haven't used.
Okay. Yeah. Can you tell us like some one or two optimize? Like we already talked about persist and broadcasting, but are there any other optimization techniques in Spark?
Yeah, in Spark, while reading data, it is always advised to use Sparklet format of the file. And the other optimization we can do is we can increase the memory, but that is not an ideal option because we can go on increasing memory, it will increase our performance, but it will affect our cost. The other things are like we can do the serialization as Cairo serialization because that will there is some time which like by default it is some serialization which is not efficient, but if we are using data frame, we are not using traditional RDD and we are using data frame APIs, then it's advised to go with the Cairo serialization, and that is one thing. And also the broadcasting, whatever we talked about, there is option to set the broadcasting what will be a smaller table size that we can specify in the set. While submitting while doing Spark Summit, we can give that in the configurations. And the other thing is there are a couple of other things also.
I have one last question on Spark. So what is the difference between order by and sort by in Spark?
Yeah, order by actually ensures that the overall ordering will be universal, but sort by actually does it in the individual, let's say, the number of partitions, like whatever partitions it is, whatever partitions are getting created. In that partition, only whatever the data is there, it is that the ordering, and the final ordering is not taken into account.
Okay. Yeah, I'm done with my questions on Spark.
Okay. Actually, I have one scenario.
Okay.
So let us say I have a file in HDFS. File is having, some data with comma separated without header.
Okay.
Okay. You can say CSV file without header, right?
Okay.
So, and I will tell you the column names explicitly. Okay. You have to create a data frame out of it based on my columns, and then and data types also will tell you. Okay. We have some TDS document. In that we'll mention the column names as well as data types, and then we'll provide you some sample data as I told you. Okay. How can you create a data frame out of it?
So for that, since you are saying it is an explicit schema that we need to define, so we have to create that schema by using whatever PySpark or like Scala Spark. So that schema has to be created, and that has to be stored in a variable, and whenever we will be, first of all, we'll be reading the data from that CSV using the Spark read, and whenever we'll be creating a data frame, we can run that create data frame. There are two ways actually to create data frames. We can use 2DS or this create data frame method. With this create data frame method, we can pass the RDD that we have created by reading the data from the CSV, and we can pass the schema that we have explicitly defined in the program.
Can you please tell me the syntax for creating a schema for particular file?
Yeah, actually, if I'm not wrong, we need to apply the schema, right, on the runtime. Okay, can you come again on the question? Maybe I am thinking something else.
So you said we have to pass schema while creating a data frame, right? That is correct. Whatever the approach that you are saying, absolutely correct. I'm just asking little deeper, like what is the syntax to create a schema? Let us say we have 5 columns and 5 data types. Okay. Now, how will you create a schema for 5 columns? Column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, column 5.
In Scala, we can create a variable, and that will be equals to struct type. The data type will be struct type of the array of columns. So that will be inside the hierarchical brackets, and within that we can pass the columns with comma delimited, and within the column definition we can pass the column name, the data type, as well as the default value for that column, if it is nullable or it is not nullable.
Correct. What is Catalyst Optimizer in Spark?
Yeah, so the role of Catalyst Optimizer is to optimize the code in such a way that the sequence of operations has to be run on minimized amount of data. So let's say we are applying filter at the end by doing this data frame operations, but it can be such that filter operations can be moved to the initial phase while reading the data, so that the amount of data which will be processed in the subsequent stages, it will be reduced. So those kind of considerations are being taken into account of Catalyst Optimizer, and also it has that option like whenever you're joining two tables, it can intelligently check if there is a small table, but still we have missed to mention it in the broadcasting threshold while setting up the configurations. If there is a filter which is being applied in our operations, it can apply the filter on the small table, and if it sees that after applying the filter it is coming under the broadcasting threshold, then it can go to a map side join as well. So those are kind of operations which Catalyst Optimizer does while creating the DAG, so that the minimal amount of data is being processed through the network.
In general, right, when we read data from source and write into our staging layer, we generally do some checks, right? So I want to use some special function by using Spark, so that need to segregate the corrupted record and accepted records. What are the methods that are available in a Spark to do so?
So your voice was making in between. So I heard up to we will be reading the data. Then after that,
okay.
What we need to
while we are pulling data from source to our target system or in our archive directory, so what generally we may follow some checks to find out the corrupted records or corrupted the data, right?
Yeah.
So to identify, to backtrace the issue, we need those corrupted records as well in a particular directory in our staging layer, right?
Okay.
So you have to create a job such a way that the job should segregate the data in a two directories. One is in a accepted directory, and the data is in the rejected directory. Okay.
Yeah.
So how can you achieve this by using Spark?
Yeah. So using Spark, we can there are three checks. One is the uniqueness of a column. If there is a primary key in a particular table, then that uniqueness we can check. We can check if a particular column is having null values. So those kind of checks, and if that is coming as a part of our business flow, that should be the logic for the individual reports. So we can apply those. There is null command for the is null method is there, and for there is drop duplicates, and there are various methods which is apply. We can apply, and those intermediate results we can filter out using those intermediate methods, store it in a data frame, and then write it back to the specified directory as you are saying, to the rejected directory, and whatever is.
Yeah, sorry. So whatever you are saying is not a manual, because you are saying completely manual methods, right? So is it possible practically by using a not null method to all the columns whichever we have? Let us say we have 1,000 columns. Do you think we have to apply not null method for 1,000 columns while reading the data? Will it practically work out?
No. In that case, we can.
Right, I'm expecting different, because if you are aware of Spark 3.0, there are some specific methods. Okay, so this was atomized by using dot methods, right? Anyway, it's fine. Your approach is fine till some extent, but it may not be feasible in a practical way. Okay.
Yeah, we can use this map method. We can map each and every column, and we can apply that is null method to every column.
But code will increase, right? We cannot go that manual level, right?
Yeah. I might be missing inbuilt functionality. Yeah, I might be missing.
No problem. Fine, I think I'm done. We can proceed later, Shravanti, if you have any.
No, that's all.
Questions from me also.
Thank
you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Anshu.